time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Our guys have locked them after the last ball game. Our seniors haven't beaten these guys. That's not something we need to allow to happen. So we'll certainly be focused on Kentucky this week and understand what's at stake.
Can't win the division this week. Neither can they. We can't lose. Neither can they. But man, you can get off to a great start and really stay in control of your destiny within the division. And that's what both teams want to do. And we're going to work our tails off to see if we can get off to a good start in conference play.
And a pleasant good afternoon to you and yours, and welcome to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic here, along with Professor Tom Hayes and producer Brian Leonard. The reason you don't hear the voice of Phil Kornbluth is because we've promoted him to traffic reporter. He is checking out I-26 for us, and he can report back to us that it is jam-packed to the gills with people who are traveling not only home in various parts across the state, but I'm sure they're also trying to get home from having been evacuated by the remnants of Hurricane and Tropical Storm Irma. So there is an increased presence on the roadways across the Midlands, the Upstate, and the Low Country. So if you are listening to us and you are out on the road and you are in bumper-to-bumper traffic, we are just here to get you back to your original domain, and we want to make sure that you have a safe and pleasant evening as you return back to your dwelling place. And we'll give you a little talk about USC and Clemson, who have equally important ball games this week, both coming in conference, one at home, one on the road. It is Talking Tuesday, after all, and we heard from both Will Muschamp of USC and Dabo Swinney of Clemson. We will hear comments from both of those gentlemen throughout the course of the program. We'll hear Kerry Tharp in our second hour as well from Darlington as the NASCAR playoffs continue to take shape. Of course, you can join us as well on this Talking Tuesday, 800-956-7266, your two-way South Carolina Sports Talk telephone number as we come in across the Palmetto State. A couple of the notes from both the press conferences. Phil was at Clemson. Myself, I was in Columbia. We'll start with Clemson. Dabo Swinney says it's very easy to have a lot of respect for this Louisville ball club, a great offensive line, and a very strong group of receivers, but it begins and ends with Lamar Jackson, Pro.
Lamar Jackson is the real deal. And the very difficult thing about him is once he starts to run, that doesn't mean anything because he can stop on a dime and still find somebody downfield.
Right.
He goes up, he'll draw the linebackers and maybe the free safety up to the line of scrimmage, and he can burn you. That's a scary thought. And I heard Dabo said, you know, you can't win the division Saturday. Yeah, but whoever wins has a step up with the condition Florida State is in its quarterback situation. So this is a huge game. This game could decide the division.
The difference between Louisville and Clemson is that Louisville has to go to Tallahassee, which you know that's probably going to be a night game. That's going to be a high-intensity football game. The advantage that Clemson gets is that they get to see the Seminoles at home.
Yeah, and of course, Clemson dispatched the Seminoles down in Tallahassee last year, but they had a guy by the name of Deshaun Watson at quarterback. But this is a tremendous division in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And as I said before, whoever just can hold service, if they win this football game, they've got two legs up. It's almost like having a two-game lead when you have that in your back pocket, that you have that victory over the closest competitor.
Well, you said something very interesting I want to stop down on with the ACC Atlantic and the SEC West. I think that those are the two divisions in college football that have the upstanding part of supremacy. Those are probably the two best divisions in college football. Though the SEC West is dominated by one foe, you could argue that the Atlantic attack is a three-pronged attack between Clemson, Louisville, and FSU. I don't know if there's a team that is on that second and third level alongside Alabama that can boast what the ACC Atlantic has to offer.
Well, athletic-wise, I think the team that's closest to Alabama has to be LSU. Their problem has been leadership at the top, complaining about the state offense that the Mad Hatter had, and I was one of those that really thought there was a change in leadership. LSU is going to be dangerous this year. I just have a feeling they will be. And I think really this hurricane notwithstanding, Mark Richt is going to get it going at Miami. I just have that feeling he's going to get going. The only dangerous spot for the anybody in the Atlantic Division, if they sneak up and Virginia Tech grabs them. Because Virginia Tech can beat anyone in the ACC.
And Clemson has a very tough road test in Blacksburg later on this season. A couple of other Clemson notes from the press conference earlier today on a Talking Tuesday here on Sports Talk. Starting running back is going to be a work in progress. The top three of Tavian Feaster, Adam Choice, C.J. Fuller are all basically equal, as Dabo Swinney said, coming into the season, coming into game one against and coming into last week against Auburn. It's something that those three are so equal that they're going to kind of take it game by game. The one thing that was mentioned, I believe, after the game Saturday and reiterated today is that if one of those guys fumbles, that's going to be something that could be penalized over the course of a game and, of course, over the course of something that we will see over the season, because of the fact that those guys are so close in positioning that they cannot afford any slippage.
Ball security is key. I can remember when Dabo's, I think it may have been his second or third recruiting class, forgot who the running back was. He promised him the first carry of the year. And you know what happened on that carry, didn't he? He fumbled.
Of course.
He fumbled. So Dabo has had this thing about ball security ever since that moment.
He's got himself a little bit of shock therapy he has to go through, a little whiplash from that perspective. Also, Marcus Edmond did not practice Monday for Clemson with a foot sprain, is still day-to-day from the injury that he suffered against Auburn. Van Smith at safety, though, did practice Monday and looked good. Switching gears to South Carolina, the Gamecocks with their home opener against Kentucky, a team that they've lost 2-3 times in a row. The streak is something that is a very real part of Will Muschamp's preparation for this ball club. The senior group has not beaten the Wildcats, at least for those guys who've been on the field. And from the Gamecocks' perspective, increased expectations only increases the pressure.
When South Carolina entered the SEC, and it's been that way for a lot of years, except for the 3 11-win seasons and Missouri entering the league, it was always looked at that it was Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee. And South Carolina and Kentucky always looked at each other as if we're going to get in that top three, you're the guy I'm going to have to leap over. And that's been that way for the 20-odd years that South Carolina has been in the SEC, 25 years. I think this is the 25th year that South Carolina has been in the league. And nothing has changed, really. It's back to that. And the pendulum swung the Wildcats' way the last 3 years with all the upheaval at South Carolina. And my feeling early is that's about to change this Saturday.
A lot of praise for Deebo Samuel nationally. We're getting some more of the plaudits that file in for him. He was named SEC Special Teams Player of the Week, as we told you yesterday. We got a chance to talk to him. We had head coach Will Muschamp talk about him. The one thing that he said today and that Coach Muschamp said today was the big part of his continued success and health, yoga, if you can believe it. So he's definitely learning his downward dog, if you will, when it comes to staying flexible, and it's helped him to 2 return touchdowns this year. The Gamecocks relatively healthy. Kyle Markway unfortunately suffered a fractured rib in the game against Missouri during the kickoff return game and will be out about 6 weeks with that injury. Stephen Montag, who did not make the trip because of concerns about playing on Missouri's turf, they expect him to practice this week and perhaps get back in that defensive secondary for USC this upcoming weekend. It is a Talking Tuesday on Sports Talk, 800-956-7266. Feel free to join us to talk about your expectations for Clemson and Louisville. Our poll question online at SportsTalkSC.com is about Lamar Jackson and the amount of yardage you expect him to gain this week against the vaunted Clemson defense that we are expecting to at least get its best defensive test of the season against the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And USC will certainly have to channel their emotions this week, conversely, against a Kentucky ball club that has a mental edge over them. That'll be a hurdle that they have to overcome. Continue to break things down and give you some comments from both head coaches as we go along. And we wait for Korn to give us his traffic report as well. Will Pelagic, Bill Kornblut, and Tom Hayes on Sports Talk, Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic, Tom Hayes, producer Brian Leonard. Eventually Phil Kornbluth, as we get him in here from his travels to the upstate and Clemson land. You know what's going to happen now? He's going to make me go to Clemson next week because of how long it's taken him to come back.
Well, it's your turn. Anyway.
It's my turn next week, I believe, since I have the Tigers for their game next week. A couple of news and notes before we get back into the football discussion. We did want to at least let you know that the Clemson Tiger baseball team recruiting class rated number 15 in the nation by Baseball America Tuesday. 3 players who were selected in the Major League Baseball first-year player draft that they will actually get on their squad in the upcoming season. Hosted regional for their second year in a row, so congratulations to Clemson for that. We'll see if those things translate into on-field plaudits. Austin Bryant receiving more recognition for what happened last week. Of course, 4-sack game against Auburn, tying a school record. 3 organizations have named him the National Defensive Player of the Week. First Clemson defensive player to win all 3 awards in the same week. He joined Keith Adams and Andre Branch as the only Clemson players to register 4 sacks in the game. He was named the Football Writers Association Bronco Nagurski National Defensive Player of the Week. He also won the Chuck Bednarik Award for the National Defensive Player of the Week, and for the Maxwell Award, he was named also Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week. So plenty to go around for Austin Bryant. And we do also want to let you know that they will be signing a beam for the new Jerry and Steve Spurrier indoor practice facility west of Gamecock Park on Bluff Road. So there'll be interesting little kickoff reception for that coming up on Friday evening with the program is scheduled to go at 6:30. 800-956-7266. Some calls. We will go ahead and get you on board if you can. We'll start leading off on a Tuesday with Glenn in North Charleston. Glenn, you're on Sports Talk. Good afternoon to you.
And I would like to say congratulations to my fantastic Gamecock team that kicked Missouri's behind just like I said would happen. And now we're going on to Kentucky, be 3-0. Watch out, Clemson. We might go in the playoffs the way it's looking because we are focused and we are taking one team at a time. And I would say kudos to Mr. Muschamp. He's a great coach now. And people had their doubts before the season. But the eggs are hatched. We're 2-0, getting ready to go 3.
Appreciate the call, Glenn. Thank you so much. I
have a feeling that Glenn reached for the Maylocks when it was 10-0.
Well, it's weird because I think just from being there, you could feel how much that game turned on a dime after those 3 plays. Yeah. I've never been at a game where the game just turned on its head so much so quickly, and you could see the bewilderment on the Missouri sideline, and you can sense the bewilderment in the Missouri fan base at how just quickly that game turned on Deebo Samuel's kickoff return for touchdown, Jamias Williams' interception, and then the Samuel jet sweep that followed. Missouri was feeling awful pretty about themselves because they had not only the field goal and a long touchdown to Jason Reese. They thought they were in control. And while they're still celebrating and doing the MIZZOU chant back and forth, they all watched Deebo Samuel go down the sideline and turn themselves into mush, so to speak. And the optimism from this fan base is interesting. It's also ruffling fans in the upstate a little bit because Clemson, of course, likes to remind everybody that they have that little ring on their finger, which is obviously a very, justifiable thing. But I do want to at least, kind of tamp down the heavy optimism because there's still some landmines on this schedule, including one this week. You're playing a team you haven't beaten in 3 years. And while the confidence, I'm sure, is there after what you saw over the NC State game and the Missouri game, still a lot that we need to see out of this USC team before we pick them a proverbial favorite to win the East. You need to see more consistent play out of Jake Bentley. You need to see some better establishment of the run game in the opening half. And I think, too, we need to see that defense basically hold steady because there's going to be a game, and you know this, Pro. There's going to be a game whether it's at home or whether it's on the road or, regardless of where it is, there's going to be a game this year where that USC defense is looking around and a little bit bewildered.
I've always said that championship teams aren't all loaded. They're good at covering up their warts.
Exactly.
And I think what South Carolina does is they've got a strong bomb on the sideline, which is called special teams.
True.
And creating turnovers. They might not be the best defense in the world, but they're trying to play basketball on a football field.
True.
Points off turnovers. That's the stat we're looking at. So they're winning. And I think the key to any enthusiasm is what you said. They have not played their best football, but have still
exactly that.
Pulled off those wins. So and I think players that's really young, they learn more and they absorb more after a victory, and you try to teach them things than to them to drag themselves with their bumps and bruises after a loss.
And not only that, I mean, you mentioned a guy who covers all their warts. Last year for Clemson, that's Deshaun Watson. And you could even say that to a little bit last week, that was Kelly Bryant. I mean, Kelly Bryant, with his rushing ability and even Hunter Renfrow to some extent, covered up some offensive inconsistency that we saw from Clemson. Now, granted, the defensive performance that they had against Auburn covered up a lot of things, and that's probably going to be their calling card this year. I'm not sure what that calling card is yet for South Carolina. Yes, it could be special teams, but you know as well as I do, Pro, Deebo Samuel is not receiving another kickoff the rest of this year. Let me put you this way. If there's a scholarship kicker the rest of this year that kicks the ball deep to South Carolina, he's going to lose it. He's going to lose his financial aid agreement. He might not make the plane ride home. That's how bad it is if you kick the ball to Deebo Samuel on the opposition this year. So we've seen the last kickoff return for touchdown, possibly, unless it happens via mistake. That's all I'm saying.
The biggest
they'd rather kick it out of bounds.
Yeah. The biggest weapon I see for them really who has been underutilized, it has to be Hayden Hurst. As I said the other night, he's the type of guy that, he came into South Carolina, of course, an older player.
Right.
He's 24 years old, but he came in as an oversized wide receiver because you could tell even in the Missouri game, he has a little bit more wiggle than the average tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And he can get deep on you if you let him do that. So I think one of the guys that you have to watch out for is Hayden Hurst and Brian Edwards, two big receivers coming down the middle of the field, because some teams are going to try to double cover Deebo Samuel.
They certainly are, and Edwards was very big on third down. 800-956-7266. Tannen is calling from Rock Hill, and you're on Sports Talk. Tannen, how are you?
Hey, good. How y'all doing?
Well, sir, yourself.
I got a question for all you guys, and I'm going to ask a question and hang up and listen, see what y'all have to say. I wanted to know, did y'all think that Florida fired Will Muschamp a little too soon? Thanks, guys. Go talk.
Appreciate it. I don't know if they fired him too soon, but I can tell you right now that coming off the year he had in 2014 at 7-5, off the previous year of 4-8, those guys at Florida have expectations that are larger than the garden variety school. And in my mind, when you are Florida and when you are a school like that, you need to satisfy the donors. You need to satisfy the people who control the pocketbooks. And for whatever reason, Jeremy Foley and the folks there at Florida felt that, we're not satisfying. We're not finding what we have as far as the pocketbooks go. But the one thing I will say about this is that the coach who was the coach at Florida at the end of the tenure is not this coach. We're seeing more the coach in Will Muschamp from the beginning of his tenure in Florida than we are at the end.
Well, he had Kurt Roper only for that last year. If they hung on to him one more year, I think he's still the coach at Florida. I really do. But the Tebow curse is still alive and well, and they still have not found a quarterback there.
Jim McElwain still has his work cut out for him. We'll come back. We'll talk some more. We'll hear from Dabo and Will on a Talking Tuesday next. This is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic, Tom Hayes, the professor. Still waiting on Phil Kornblut. We'll get to him though. He's gonna be coming in and panting when he gets in here. You know that. You know that's gonna happen. I wanted to at least reference something that Tannen from Rock Hill brought to us before the break, and we were up against it, and so we really didn't have enough time to kind of get into it. But he asked about whether or not Will Muschamp was fired too soon at Florida. And if you remember the way that the end of that tenure played out, a lot of that was basically all results in 2013, where they started out 4-1, lost 7 in a row, including one to Georgia Southern. And then the following year at 7-5, they lost a really bad home game against Missouri. They lost to South Carolina in overtime, lost to Florida State to end the year, end up in the Birmingham Bowl. And one of the things we talked about is the fact that the expectations at a place like Florida, they don't strive to go to the Birmingham Bowl. I mean, no offense to the Birmingham Bowl, but they expect to be in, New Year's Day bowls, the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, all those kinds of things. Those are the expectations at a place like Florida, and he fell victim to a place with increased expectations like that. Well, he also fell victim to artistic flair, even when he was 11-2. But we're not winning the way we used to in Spurrier was here. He was tacking on points. I think I'll put up 50 on Georgia since we get to play in Sanford Stadium, that sort of thing. And they were used to that swagger and beating and just pummeling people, whereas Muschamp was playing defense and keeping the score close because he didn't have a quarterback, and the offensive coordinators were like a revolving door till you got to Kurt Roper. And something that you said during the break that I want to reference, him coming here after Spurrier left, not only was he probably the best hire that they could have gotten, but he built a staff about as quickly as he could have, and a quality staff at that. Yeah, and all have a myriad of experience in the Southeastern Conference. So they knew the lay of the land, and they knew the recruiting territories. And all of them are – and this is the first time, and people know this because as you get coaches up in age, they're more CEOs than hands-on. And this is the first ultra-aggressive head coach recruiting-wise that South Carolina has had, I would say, in their history of playing football. Switching gears to Clemson, who takes on Louisville this week, a big game for the Tigers going in against the Cardinals. That was a shootout last year, 42-36 at Death Valley. Dabo Swinney expects a lot of the same out of a Louisville squad that boasts the Heisman Trophy winner. Again, got a lot of respect for Louisville, their team. We've had some incredible battles with them, and I don't expect this one to be any different. Offensively, I mean, they're crazy good. It's video numbers. I mean, it's unbelievable. The numbers are averaging 614 yards a game and 7.6 yards per play. That's incredible. And they've played two pretty good games, two good teams where they've had to put up those numbers. So it's just impressive. I mean, Lamar Jackson is unbelievable football player. He's fun to watch. He's not fun to prepare for. He's not fun to play against. I much prefer to watch him. I enjoy that a lot better. We got our hands full with this guy, man. What a player. He's averaging 505 yards a game, averaging in 2 games, 505 yards a game. So big challenge for the Tigers this week as we get ready to head up there. Their offensive line, they're really good. They're well coached. Coach Petrino does as good a job as anybody, he and his staff, and just play design and how they attack you. They do a great job, and they're probably got as good a group of receivers as we're going to see. They're big guys, 6'4", 6'3", 6'2". So he's got a bunch of playmakers at his disposal, and they do a good job of getting it to him. Defensively, the biggest thing that jumps out is all the guys back that have played a lot of football for them. I think they got 12 or 13 guys that started at some point last year. I think 9 maybe full-time starters back off of last year's defense. It's a really good group. They're big and strong up front.
They've got I know they had they got a corner at number 10 as a great football player. I don't know his status, but I know he got hurt. I don't know if he's back or not, but what a player. He's also their returner. You know, they've got good quality people all across the board, and a new coordinator this year. So, you know, trying to really get a beat on who they are and how they're using their personnel similarly and differently from the previous staff there. But again, another big challenge for us going against a great defense, especially at our place. But again, we're looking forward to it. This is a fun game to prepare for, because you just know that, man, every play is so critical, and you got to make your opportunities count when you get them, and then just the challenge of you know, playing against the Heisman Trophy winner. You know, I think that's something that you get excited about because you want to play the best, and you know, what they've done offensively is pretty special to see. So look forward to seeing how we match up, how we do under the bright lights Saturday night, game day, all that stuff. And it's a division game. That's our next goal. We can't win the division this week. Neither can they. We can't lose it. Neither can they. But, man, you can get off to a great start and really stay in control of your destiny within the division. And that's what both teams want to do. And we're going to work our tails off to see if we can get off to a good start in conference play.
Those are the words of Dabo Sweeney, Clemson head coach, as Clemson gets ready to take on Louisville. It's my pleasure to welcome in the third member of our crew, number one in our hearts, Phil Kornblut.
Well, I don't want to change the direction of the program. You guys are doing great. Really enjoyed listening to you. It sounded almost as good as when I'm in here. So you guys did a really good job.
It did feel a little empty.
Enjoyed listening to you. I just want to say this. My heart goes out to the people of Florida on I-26 and trying to get to I-95. If you are coming from the upstate to get through Columbia to get to 95, you're getting the full brunt of Malfunction Junction because it is an absolute mess out there going back miles outside of Columbia. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, it's just backed up. It's just the volume. And Columbia can't handle the volume of the additional cars plus the Columbia rush hour. And what's weird is, you know, usually this time of day, it's going out of Columbia from downtown and all this backed up. And now it's folks trying to get through Columbia, through Malfunction Junction on the 26 East and down to I-95. And we already hear 95 is really heavy. And I passed so many people from Florida. Well, they passed me. And you just know that they're trying to get home. They don't know what they're going to find. They got their belongings in their cars.
And it went back to this morning, too. I had an errand that I had to run in West Columbia this morning, and it was backed up even then, and we even had some accidents. And so I know that people are trying to take their time and make things happen safely, but I'm sure a lot of this traffic is causing some extra ire and anxiety.
I would like to see, because we lived only a couple of miles away from it, to see how many people have actually taken 301 to Florida.
Maybe bring it back to life.
You know, because 301 is still a strong route, but that's when we used to say we're taking the scenic route instead of I-95. Go to 301.
Make a left and go stay at south of the border for a couple of days and bring it back to life. But no, it is an absolute mess. It took me 90 minutes to get from Harbison to here.
Get out.
No, I'm not kidding. I mean, first you come to a grinding stop, and then it's, you know, start, stop.
It took me 30 to get from Harbison to Willie B this morning, which was not.
And what you got, of course, is if you know how that area is designed on the interstate, you know, you got to get over to the far right 2 lanes to get on to make the turn at Malfunction Junction to stay on 26 to get to 95. So you got all these people coming in. They don't know this, and all they've got to do, all of a sudden they've got to merge hard right, and it's just backing up everything because there's just such a volume of traffic out there right now.
Will Muschamp on Kentucky, how he feels about the Wildcats, and Phil's recruiting report when we come back on Sports Talk.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We welcome in all our listeners from the state of Florida, crawling through the Palmetto State, trying to get back home. Safe travels. Best of luck.
It's funny. They wouldn't like what we said about Will Muschamp, too.
I heard that. And, let me just answer, since I hate to be imposing on the show here as a late arrival.
I would like you to have.
But I had a thought in my mind, because I'm listening like I'm doing the show, but listening to you guys talking and listening to the caller from Rock Hill, and I think Florida made a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you give a coach a chance. I agree with you. Their belief in themselves and their standards might be heightened, maybe not justified. I mean, Florida had its great years under Steve Spurrier. Prior to that, Florida was crap. Florida didn't win an SEC championship until Steve Spurrier got there. So don't act like you're Alabama.
Well, it's funny.
Or don't act like you're LSU.
Well,
don't even act like you're.
Part of that was because they were on probation too a lot.
Well, yeah, I can say this about what the BCS era has done. Is the BCS era, and even post that now with the college football playoff, is it's given credence to a lot of these age-old interpretations of certain teams. And you get teams like Florida and Tennessee, A&M, Nebraska, a lot of these teams that basically start out above a glass ceiling or a perceived glass ceiling, and they expect to be at that level perpetually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bad thing for college football, in my mind.
Okay.
And I think that that's basically what led to Will Muschamp's downfall, is the perception there allows Florida fans to think that they should be better than they really are, and makes them more impatient.
Well, again, he was a young coach, and you're exactly right. He's not the same coach now that he was when he was at Florida. I think he's learned a lot, and just watching him and seeing what he is doing, those of us who get a chance to see a little bit the inside of what he's doing and to follow the program, you can see the little things that he is doing to build his program from the inside out. And that's how you build a long-lasting, successful program, from the inside out. And it's the recruiting, it's the assistants, it's the in the office people, it's now the social networking. Of course, you've got the brick and mortar buildings, and South Carolina is going to have all that when this football building is completed next year. They'll have everything that everybody else has got, and they'll have all the bells and whistles that are necessary. But it's beyond that. It's the relationships. South Carolina put out a really nice video after their win at NC State.
Right.
And it just showed Muschamp going around and hugging all the coaches and slapping hands and high-fiving the fans as he was leaving the field. And it just shows a guy who has totally bought in to South Carolina.
Right.
And has totally thrown his heart and soul into building this program and to becoming, I think, the long-term fixture as a coach at South Carolina that they have been seeking, and not a coach who is on the way down in his career, but a coach who's now on the way up in his career.
Well, I think we've seen enough from him over the first couple of years with that buy-in that this is a guy who's here and he's in for the long haul. He's not going to be looking at another job.
I wouldn't think so.
And I think that that's a good thing for this program. And the best thing for this program, when we talk a lot about Dabo's staff being one of the best. I don't think we talk enough about how good his SC staff will must.
Well, they still have to prove themselves a little bit.
True.
6 wins last year, and they're 2-0 this year, so they're 8-7. In their 15 games at South Carolina, and that's a start. And we'll see where they go from here. Right now, the excitement level is very high.
Sure.
I think they'll beat Kentucky.
Sure.
And go to 3-0. I think they'll beat La Tech and go to 4-0, and then they go to Texas A&M with a chance to get to 5-0 in the month of September. Now, I was very optimistic about them going into the season and thought they could go 4-1, 3-2. 5-0 was a bit of a stretch. It may still be. This team is not without its deficiencies, as you guys were talking about earlier. I mean, they still got to get better on offense. They still need to be more productive on offense. But overall, in practically every aspect, except maybe place kicking, they're a better football team.
Will Muschamp talked about those deficiencies that they might have against Kentucky and, of course, the perceived mental edge the Wildcats might have going into Saturday night's home opener.
Kentucky here Saturday night. Great to get back to Williams-Brice Stadium in front of our fans, and I know they'll be excited. We'll have a great crowd against Kentucky. It's a good football team. Mark Stoops, a good friend of mine, does an outstanding job. He's done a fantastic job at Kentucky. Eddie Grand, their offensive coordinator, another guy that I've worked with before and I got a lot of respect for. Really committed to the run last year, really against us probably. And Benny Snell's an outstanding back, tough, hard-nosed, runs north and south, gets positive yards, rarely takes negative plays. Shaheem King's a guy that is a change of pace guy, somewhat of what they had last year with some other guys. Has done a really nice job. They're big and athletic up front. C.J. Conrad's an outstanding tight end that you've got to account for in the run and pass game. Steven Johnson's a guy that I think has really been a calming factor for their team when they went with him last year and creating some things with his legs. He throws the ball well, but commands their offense extremely well. Garrett Johnson's one of their leading receivers in Kentucky history, and they've got a good, talented core. At the receiver position, they're more of an odd structure defensively. And the two guys that jump out at me is Courtney Love and Jordan Jones. Both linebackers are very active, make a bunch of plays, very instinctive. They're long and athletic in the secondary. And special teams, Dean Hood, their coordinator, does a really good job there. So we got our work cut out for us, but it's really, really excited for our players and for our fans to get home to Williams-Brice. Excited about that.
Will, how much, if at all, have you mentioned a 3-game losing streak to Kentucky to the guys?
Well, I told them, our guys in the locker room after the last ball game, that our seniors haven't beaten these guys, and that's not something we need to allow to happen. And so we'll certainly be focused on Kentucky this week and understand what's at stake. It's the SEC East. It's the home opener. So there's a lot of things. I think this, last year, this is a football team that we could not stop the run last year. They bled us out in the fourth quarter, and we didn't run the ball effectively at all. So, good challenge for our guys this week.
Swimming.
Will Muschamp talking about the Wildcats. How much of that mental edge do you think falls on this South Carolina team going in against Kentucky?
0. I think every game they lost to Kentucky, they made enough mistakes that let Kentucky win those football games. They eliminate those mistakes, then they win the football game. I think with the young players here, in combination with the guys who have been through the rough spots the last 2 or 3 years, they're ready to make some hay. They don't care how they win it. They just want to win. And suddenly winning becomes habitual, just like losing. And these guys are resourceful enough. They want to do the things they want to do to win. And I, like Corn, believe early on, at least the beginning of this week, that the Wildcats will have their own tiger by the tail in Williams-Brice Stadium, but they'll be in form of Gamecock feathers.
They're not going to lose to Kentucky 4 years in a row. It's just not going to happen. Period. End of story. That game is over. I'm telling you, they're not going to lose to Kentucky 4 years in a row. All 3 of these games were that they've lost. My memory serves me right. Were pretty close games. Yeah. I think South Carolina they had an opportunity to win here last time, and there was a late interception that was thrown. And I know Kentucky's an improved team. I know South Carolina, their biggest downfall with Kentucky in these losses was stopping the Kentucky running game.
Yeah, and that's the thing that they've actually stepped up with this year. At least in the Missouri game, they were very, very strong against the run, and in the NC State game, they were very strong against the run.
Yeah, and I think that I just think South Carolina and Kentucky all are pretty even programs right now. Kentucky has done a nice job with Stoops in improving their recruiting across the board, so they've gotten some better players. But it's at home. I believe in percentages. I believe in the momentum that South Carolina's got going for it. Kentucky struggled mightily in its first 2 games.
I hear the voice of the fan, though, in my head, always wondering whether or not the other shoe will drop. We're wondering if that's going to happen this week, whether it will happen at all. This could be a thing.
What shoe is that?
The other shoe. Everything's going good. Everything's happy, go lucky.
It's too early. It's too early to have another shoe. That shoe would be wedged up somebody's backside by Muschamp if he was to think about the other shoe.
I'm not thinking about it. I'm saying the fans are thinking about it.
In fact, I think the Gamecocks, they're favored by 6.5?
Something like that.
They're going to cover. We'll cover. In fact, that's how I'm going to play it this week.
I think you spent too much time on the road, pal.
It's the top of the hour break. We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, we're back. It is Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Talking Tuesday. Good to be back together. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic,
sir,
Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard behind the bulletproof glass. 800-956-70. Yes, Brian, it is bulletproof. Not sure if it's missile-proof, but it's definitely bulletproof.
You know, it just occurred to me that we need to assign a nickname for Mr. Brian.
We'll come up with one at some point in time. 800-956-7266 is our number if you'd like to join in. Our email, talkback@sportstalksc.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC for all your Twitter information from us. Recruiting coming up in just a couple of moments. Also more from Dabo Sweeney and from Will Muschamp on this Talking Tuesday edition of Sports Talk, made possible by your local electric cooperatives. Man, they're out there working their tails off, trying to get the power back where it is needed. And, of course, the sponsor of this year's annual Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. And to find out more about what co-ops are doing across the state, visit ecsc.org and save that date, December 9th, for the 2017 Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. Yeah, I saw a lot of power trucks up and down the interstate making the rounds around the state today, trying to get everybody back online here in South Carolina. All right, let me give you the recruiting notes for tonight. Defensive back Stephen Gilmore Jr. from South Point, been focusing for months, USC, North Carolina, Georgia, and Louisville. Sunday, between 4 and 6, at a spot to be determined in Rock Hill, he plans to announce. Last night he told us the decision has been made, and he says, I pretty much know now. He said it was where I saw the best opportunity for me as a whole. It was where I felt best, where I felt myself in the future best at. He was at North Carolina for the Louisville game. He might go to USC this Saturday for the Kentucky game. He said he's been in touch with USC, and he has talked with the Gamecocks a good bit, most recently, as he put it, not too long ago. He's not scheduled any official visits, but he said he probably will take some even after he commits. Of course, his brother was a Gamecock standout, Stephon Gilmore.
Yes.
And so we'll see, you know, where this has been kind of interesting in that he hasn't been around South Carolina a whole heck of a lot. Like I mentioned, he was just at North Carolina this past weekend. You try to
a lot of times that
read the tea leaves and see if any of that means anything.
A lot of times that legacy stuff can help you. Sometimes they want to create their own name somewhere else.
Yeah, this is true. Now, he's a very good defensive back and a very good receiver. He put on a show in the state championship game for South Point at Williams-Brice Stadium last December. Defensive back C.J. Smith of West Palm Beach, Florida, said USC, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss are the three schools he's focused on. He's hoping to get confirmation soon from his Gamecock recruiter, Travaris Robinson, on an official visit for September 23rd. He does have visits confirmed with Oklahoma October 6th and Ole Miss October 21st. In basketball, USC today offered 6'7" Tyrese Samuel, who is playing basketball up in Canada, and apparently he's a pretty highly regarded player, and he is in the 2019 class. He's a junior this year. Formerly out of the Maryland area, and so South Carolina now up in Canada, and has offered him. And in baseball, America's top 25 recruiting classes came out today, and USC is rated number 5, and Clemson is rated number 15 with their recruiting classes for this year. Vanderbilt is number 1, Florida is 2, Arkansas is 3, Arizona State is 4. USC's 5, Auburn 6, Florida State 7, 8 is Miami, Kentucky's 9. See a theme here? Kentucky's 9, and then Michigan is 10.
A lot of SEC up there.
And some ACC in there as well. But, yeah, SEC pretty much dominating the rankings. All right, there you go with recruiting. And don't forget to follow along with us on recruiting on our website every day, every night. Website, SportsTalkSC.com. And on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. Let's hit David up on the phones down in Charleston here next up on Sports Talk. David, welcome in. How's everything down your way?
Well, no, I'm actually up in the upstate.
Oh, in the upstate. I'm sorry.
Yes.
How's everything up your way?
Well, got some power outages, but overall, pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate it. What's on your mind tonight, David?
You know, I wanted to find out about the lower state schools, and I know there was supposed to be a pretty big game this past Friday, but because of the weather and the hurricane, that kind of threw a wrench in things. But do you know if they're back on schedule, or is that too soon right now?
Well, David Shelton was with us last night from down there, and he said that some games they hope to be played on Friday night. There could be some played on Monday. He said they were trying to stay away from scheduling on Saturday because of going up against the college games. Didn't you mention to me that Bishop England has been postponed?
Monday they're going to play.
Bishop England's already postponed their game until Monday. I would imagine with the degree of flooding and everything down there, there's going to be a lot of games in that area postponed until next week. I'm not even sure they're back in school yet.
There was one that I know everybody up here was keeping an eye on that. Some people were even talking about going to. Was a big game in Columbia with Dutch Fork and Somerville. Do you know if that one is postponed?
Yeah, it was postponed last week. I do not believe at this point that it's been made up or will be made up.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And as I'm looking here, rescheduled games, let's see, Friday, September 15th. So a couple of games, I guess, that were postponed. Carolina Forest and Myrtle Beach. They're going to play Friday. C.A. Johnson, Bethune-Bowman are going to play Friday at Lower Richland High School. So this is on the High School League website. We're starting to see some information about rescheduled games pop up there.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Just stay tuned. We'll let you know as we hear stuff.
Also, I just saw that the SEC has announced that they will play the game in Gainesville, Tennessee, Florida, as scheduled.
Love how you've made me our Bishop England correspondent.
Well, you claimed them as your team. I remember your words here on the show. I love the Bishops. That's my team.
But they told me they don't want me. They said they don't want me no more. Well, it's all over.
I think you brought them bad luck. I don't think that you've done anything to really help them so far.
My fault. Not my fault.
All right, thanks for the call. 800-956-7266 is the phone number here on Sports Talk.
It's funny. I just got sent a photo from one of the people in the SC press corps. I'm going to put it up on Sports Talk SC's Twitter of me, basically a screen grab from the press conference.
Is that a picture of Muschamp looking at you as you're asking a question?
Muschamp is looking at me and not exactly very happily.
What was your question?
I don't remember. I asked two different questions in that press conference. There was one that I asked about Jake Bentley being overhyped, and there was another one I asked about the Hayden Hurst.
You asked
jet sweep.
Muschamp if he thinks Bentley's overhyped?
No, not overhyped. How he was overhyped in the game.
Overexcited.
Caused him to overthrow Hayden Hurst on that first third down.
Yeah.
A couple other throws that were a little bit high.
I think you'll see even though everybody around him is going to be jacked up, I think you'll see a calmer Bentley at home. He just has shown that he is calmer inside Williams-Brice than he is anywhere else.
That's such a funny photo.
Up to Gaffney. Allen, welcome into Sports Talk tonight. How are you?
Good evening, guys. I'm going to ask a couple of questions regarding recruiting. I saw via Twitter as well as some different reports, including your site, I believe, on some of them. It looks like it's shaping up to be a huge recruiting weekend there in Columbia with and I was just going to ask you, Phil, of these guys that I'm hearing should be there, who you feel like, I know it's kind of early, but they stand a good chance with. I believe I saw that Dylan Wanham, Rick Sandage, Dax Holyfield, J.C. Horn, Channing Kendall from Columbia there.
All right, hang on a second. Alan, we got to hit a quick break, and we'll come right back to you. More on Sports Talk coming up in a moment. Back we are, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. To clarify some information on that basketball offer, I'm doing a little more digging on him. Tyrese Samuel is a native of Montreal who now attends school in Utah at Wasatch Academy. He actually had also been at a school in Maryland, but now he's out in Utah.
Which school in Maryland?
6'8" Tyrese Samuel. He was at Riverside. If I'm reading this story right, just trying to track the history of the young man. And he is in the class of 2019, 6'8" forward, USC has offered. Back to Alan in Gaffney. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I was just talking about it. It looked like it was shaping up to be a lot of big-name recruits of the game this weekend. Just going to ask you particularly about one I've heard a little bit about. I think he's an Alabama commitment, Quay Walker out of Georgia. And if we got any kind of shot with him like we did with Sterling last year, and then just how significant could this successful start to our season be in the recruitment of some of these guys? And I'll listen to y'all off air and enjoy the show. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, certainly, I mean, winning helps everything. Okay, I mean, everything is better when you're winning. So recruiting certainly benefits from a good start. When people are saying good things about you, when the national talking heads are noticing you and saying good things about you, when it becomes cool and fun to play at a school, that helps you in recruiting, and that's all a product of winning. And you're starting to see that now here early from South Carolina. If they can beat Kentucky in front of a rabid home crowd in a great setting with their new DJ.
You're looking. You want me to report back on the
progress
of the DJ?
I mean, they made a big deal out of announcing they're having a DJ. I think you need to report back on the quality of his performance. That's going to be crucial to winning the game. I think properly spun hip hop can affect the mental approach of the visiting team inside the stadium.
Now, what did you think of Clemson's DJ this weekend?
He's top dog.
So the DJ out trumps the soft ice cream machine. I mean, what?
So that's 1960s.
Oh, that's old school. Okay,
it's 1960s.
The DJ at South Carolina, according to Will Muschamp, does not jive with what he would want. He said he would want some Darius Rucker on there.
I'm sure he would.
That's what he said.
But that's not what he's going to get.
He was asked about that.
I can promise you he's not getting Darius Rucker in the pregame DJing repertoire. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, I mean, this is their first home game. They're going to get in as many of their top targets for 18 and 19 as they can. You mentioned some of those who have said they're coming in. Of that group, it would appear to me from talking with them, certainly Tyndall is a very good possibility for South Carolina at this point. Though his continuing to delay things, he wants to do his due diligence and maybe visit the Florida schools again, or maybe give them a chance to recover from the hurricane so they can get back to recruiting him. And so he's slowing things down from that standpoint. Sandage, he's got Sandage. He's got the South Carolina background with his mom. He's been there several times. They've recruited him very hard. And Will Muschamp has been personally recruiting these guys a lot, and I think that has impressed a lot of the top targets on their list, in that Muschamp has gotten actively involved with these guys and is trying to do the best job he can to bring them in. So will some fall this weekend? Probably not. You never know. Besides the Steve Gilmore situation on Sunday. As far as guys coming in and committing off this game this weekend, probably not. It sounds to me like most of these guys still want to take some more visits and take a little bit more time. But it is going to be a great opportunity for this South Carolina staff and this team to show itself off to the recruits and the fans, to do their thing and help South Carolina influence some of these guys to come their way.
It's a showcase weekend. You have to. I mean, you have to look at a lot of these different things. And like you said, they don't have necessarily all the bells and whistles like a Clemson would have just yet. But the building blocks are in place, and this would be a very big foundational weekend if they can not only get a signature win, but also continue that optimism that's going forward.
You asked about Quay Walker, the linebacker from Crisp County in Cordele, Georgia. Been committed to Alabama since June. South Carolina was on his short list, Auburn, Florida, LSU. South Carolina strong enough to turn a kid from Alabama? I don't know yet that they can. Now, it's about relationships and all that, and if he comes in and sees something he really likes or finds out he likes a coach more, it's possible. But, again, I'm not going to say they can or they can't. If he's visiting, always believe if a kid is visiting, there must be some interest there, and you have a chance.
It's not just about relationships. It's about one other thing, playing time.
That's always important, too. Yeah. All right. Back to our Talking Tuesday and back up to Clemson, where I was today with the Tigers. And got a good look at I-26 on my way back in the traffic. Clemson going to Louisville to face Lamar Jackson. You know, Lamar Jackson this year in 2 games, total offense is averaging 506 yards per game. If he was a team just by himself in the national ranking, he'd be 26th in the country in total offense by himself after 2 games. What does Dabo think of Lamar Jackson?
You keep giving that ball to that guy, you're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened last year. You know, we played really good in the first half, but we just, again, 5 turnovers. And found a way to win. I think we're on the field maybe 100+ snaps. Our defense just, you know, I mean, got a little tired. It's a lot of snaps, you know, but give them credit. I mean, he was unbelievable. I mean, he made a lot of football plays, and he makes a lot of people look bad. But the key thing is you want to minimize his opportunities, and we didn't do a good job of that last year, you know, and we didn't maximize our opportunities. Like I said, 3 turnovers inside the 10-yard line, where we got no points, and now you keep giving them the ball, and that guy's just too good, you know. So we hope that we can play better, but you know, hopefully we can do a little better job of taking care of the ball and maximizing our opportunities when they present themselves, and then hopefully creating some turnovers for the good guys.
Trino said that he wanted to make Lamar more of a pro-style passer to get him ready for the league. Do you see a difference in him so far this year and his accuracy?
He's throwing the ball well. I mean, they got big plays all over the place, and they get the ball down the field. You know, they've been a little bit more 5-man protection in the first 2 games, you know, than maybe last year. Last year they were a little bit more max protection. And this year they've been a little bit more, you know, some hot releases with their backs. They throw the ball to the back a ton. And I think that's where he's done a really good job, is he's sat in the pocket and he's checking the ball down. You know, they're getting that back out hot into the flats, through the line, flare routes, and he's been very accurate. And, you know, everybody's so geared up because he can push the ball down the field so well. They've given up a lot of things underneath. And so to me, that's the biggest thing, is he's not making many mistakes, and he's just taking advantage of what's there. And then he's still Lamar. You know, I mean, you're never gonna take away his creativity and his feet that the good Lord's blessed him with. I mean, you're in great position, but you still got to make the tackle. And next thing you know, he avoids the tackle, because sometimes, you know, a defensive guy will beat an offensive lineman or whatever, and I'll stand there and get sacked. And he's going to use his gift, and he's able now to create. And so, you know, now you got to cover really good players a long time, or you get anxious and you come out of coverage, and he can throw on the run as good as anybody. So he just looks like a very confident, complete player to me this year. Whereas all
right, Dabo Swinney talking about the man he'll be trying to help corral with his defense on Saturday, Lamar Jackson. And, you know, as good as Clemson was on defense last year, he still had, against the Tigers in Death Valley, was it 457 yards of total offense and 3 touchdowns? Mm-hmm. And, you know, they came within an eyelash of having a chance to win that game. Van Smith had to make a tackle on a 4th. They were facing 4th and 12 from the Clemson 13, and we'll be right back. All right, time to go inside NASCAR for a few minutes here on Sports Talk over in Darlington County. We welcome in our good friend, the president of Darlington Raceway, Kerry Tharp. Before we go back and talk about things from the Bojangles Southern 500 and look ahead to the playoffs, I guess the big news today, the announcement by Danica Patrick that she will not be returning to Stewart-Haas Racing next year. Not a huge surprise, I don't think. The question is, will she find a ride somewhere for next year?
Well, Phil, that's a great question. Certainly, she's been over at Stewart-Haas Racing for about 6 years now. And really, this was a decision about sponsorship. Smithfield over at Petty Motorsports left Petty and is going over to Stewart-Haas Racing. And I presume is going to bring their driver, Eric Almirola, with them. So, she was kind of the odd person out. But, as far as next year, I guess that remains to be seen. You've kind of heard rumblings that maybe this would be her last year of competition on the racetrack. But we'll just have to wait and see. Certainly, she's been a great ambassador for the sport. She's been a great representative of the sport. Really has helped the sport grow in a lot of different ways. And so I'm sure that there's some ways that she'll still be, connected to the sport. We're just not sure if it's still going to be as a driver.
Mm-hmm. Interesting looking at the fact that what this has on Almirola. How does that affect him, and how does that shuffle shake out in your mind?
Well, Eric is a solid driver. He's contended and won races before, and I think he's certainly capable of getting in the playoffs over at Stewart-Haas Racing. Of course, he had a tough go of it this year with a fractured back, but he fought back, and I think he's a solid race car driver. So, here lately, over the last year or so, it's been a lot about sponsorship, and if your sponsor can deliver the driver, then that's where that driver winds up. We've seen that happen several times already this year. And so, I think, what does that mean for Richard Petty over at the 43? I guess that remains to be seen as well. So you would certainly hope that Richard Petty's fielding a car next year in the Cup Series. I can't imagine us having a Cup Series without the 43 car in there. So hopefully that will shake itself out. But, there's still some time here in the regular season, and in the off season will get very interesting as they continue to make some moves along the personnel front.
Yeah, nobody wants to think about NASCAR without the 43 running in it. That would be unfathomable.
Well, it wouldn't be something that people are accustomed to. It's been in the sport for about as long as the sport's been around, and you would hope that the 43 car is able to attract a quality driver with a quality sponsor. And, Richard Petty is an icon. He's like if you look at the NBA logo, it's got Jerry West on it. Well, the NASCAR, if they ever went to a driver logo, it would have Richard Petty on it. So, he's a guy that has meant so much to the sport. His organization, his family have meant so much to the sport. So, let's hope and let's just hope that there's a 43 car out there running next year in the Cup Series.
We turn our attention to Chicagoland, Kerry, and obviously the playoffs beginning. The field is set of 16. How would you handicap this field as we start in Chicago?
Well, I tell you, Will, I think it's the most wide open field since I've been in NASCAR. You look at the field, you've got defending champions, you've got former champions, you've got new drivers, you've got drivers that are kind of, lame duck, so to speak. And so I think it's a good mixture of drivers. You got first-time winners, and you got guys that are in the field that haven't won this year that are certainly capable of winning once they get into the playoffs. And so I think it's a good mixture of talent across the field with the playoffs. I really kind of like how the stage racing set things up and how this is all kind of shaken out. And, when we get to Chicago this weekend, I certainly think half the field, and I mean this, I think half the field could conceivably win the championship. And so I don't know if we've been able to say that before, but I think it's fairly wide open if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Kerry, with the weather we've had, any of the drivers home base in Florida, and have you heard anything about the condition of Daytona after the storm?
Yeah. Well, I talked to Chip Wild today, by the way, and he was on his way back to Daytona, and he said that they likely had some cosmetic damage to the facility, but I think in total that the structure was safe and sound. And I think the same thing holds true for Homestead, Miami, the site of the championship race here in about 2 months. And, that place got hit hard down there a couple of days ago with Hurricane Irma. And, thankfully it looks like that there wasn't anything significantly done, but it's going to take them several days, maybe a few weeks to get the place back in shape. And so, you're just thankful that nothing significant happen to either one of the racetracks, but that's just a terrible storm that's came through the state of Florida and other parts of the southeastern part of the country. But as far as I know, everything is fairly intact.
Kerry, reflecting on the Bojangles Southern 500 weekend, what kind of numbers have you seen come across your desk regarding attendance, television ratings, anything you can share with us?
Well, yeah, Phil, we don't release attendance figures. IFC does not, but I would dare say that we probably had upwards of 60,000 people on the property across the race weekend, and I think that's a healthy number. And certainly we got a good response back from the crowd we had in the grandstands on Sunday night for the Bojangles Southern 500. It looked good on TV. It looked good in person. And so, by all accounts, it was a successful weekend. There was a lot of interest, a lot of energy, certainly a lot of great storylines out there. I know the drivers enjoyed it. I thought it was a heck of a race. Both races, actually. I thought the Xfinity race was exciting. I thought the Cup race was exciting. So, all in all, we thought it was a very, very successful weekend.
Hear anything on the TV numbers, up, down, flat? Any response on that?
Well, Phil, we were actually on NBC Sports Network this year as opposed to NBC last year. So I think the rating probably maybe not quite as high as it was on the big network last year. I haven't seen the final numbers yet, but still I would dare say that we were likely either the number 1 or number 2 rated sporting event over the weekend.
Very good, very good. As you look ahead to 2018 with your place and you start your planning, do you expect any significant changes?
Well, Phil, we're always trying to improve and do things to make our experience better. Next year will be the 70th anniversary of NASCAR. And so we're going to do something with that. Exactly how we attack that, we're not exactly sure, but that's kind of a big window of opportunity for us. When you think about 70 years of our sport, will be celebrated in 2018. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at that way. Certainly, we're always looking to improve our facility, working with our parent corporation, International Speedway Corporation. And so, we are hopeful for some ability to improve our facility and those types of things. But those decisions probably won't be made until later this year. Really, we're just now actually starting the debriefing process from this past year's race, and we'll do that over the next 7 to 10 days, and then we'll start full bore for the 2018 race here probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
All right, you want to give us your pick to win the championship? Is this going to be like the time Jimmy Johnson puts it in the 5th gear and gets going again?
Well, he very well could. I think there's about 4 drivers that I like. Of course, there's probably no surprises, but I think Martin Truex Jr. in my mind is the top candidate. I'm going to pick him to win the championship. I think it's time for him to win a title. He's been close before. He's run well, extremely well all season long, and these racetracks coming up, I think, are pretty favorable to him. Kyle Busch, I don't think you can rule him out either. I don't think you can rule out Kyle Larson and or Jimmy Johnson. So, it could be, though, you could get somebody just out of nowhere to win like a Denny Hamlin. But I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr.
Very good. KT, thank you, my friend. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you much. Kerry Tharp with us here on Sports Talk, talking NASCAR.
Sounds pleased, as anyone would, after what we saw Southern 500.
No, I would think so. It was a great, great night and a great weekend for Darlington. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. It is Sports Talk here on a Talking Tuesday. We got more from Will Muschamp for you in just a moment. A little while ago, I was trying to complete a sentence and I lost track of time.
Oops.
And my head, my brain is completely scrambled eggs tonight after sitting in that traffic, driving up and back from Clemson. I wanted to say that we were talking about Lamar Jackson, I think.
Yes.
And the big game he had against Clemson. And, of course, they nearly pulled that game out. It took Van Smith making a tackle. They had it, if you recall, Louisville had the ball last. Clemson had built a lead. Louisville came storming back. Clemson retook the lead. Louisville goes down the field, got it 4th and 12 at the Clemson 13, I think it was.
Right.
And throws a little pass. Looks like he's at the very least going to get the first down, and Smith comes up and hits him and knocks him down, knocks him out of bounds a yard short with 33 seconds to go, and Clemson holds on to win. That's what you have to do to win championships and beat good teams. So, I'm not so sure this might not be Louisville's time.
Oh, I'm deathly terrified of this game. I'm deathly terrified.
They have lost to Clemson all 3 times they've played by a total of 15 points.
Yeah.
And last time they were up there, it was a real scramble for Clemson to win that game. There was a kickoff return, I believe, as part of that game that went against Clemson. And so I don't know.
That's the game that Clemson's defense early on had to save the day. Deshaun hadn't gotten his sea legs yet, and they had to save that game for Clemson.
Let me ask you the question this way. How many points do you think Clemson's offense is currently constituted can legitimately score against this Louisville defense?
24.
Yeah, I was going to say something in the 20s.
That means you have to hold Lamar Jackson to 21.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This might be Louisville's time. I got to think about it more. I haven't come up with my definitive pick for the game yet. I'll let you know later in the week.
What's the line on that game?
Clemson was favored by a small amount. Was it
2.5?
2.5 or 3, something like that. So,
I don't know if
they are a favorite. All right, back to USC and Will Muschamp today. This Talking Tuesday, and the Gamecocks getting ready for their home opener, trying to go 2-0 in the SEC, and also importantly, this would be a second win in the East if they're able to pull it off.
It certainly would be, and one of the things that was referenced on our program yesterday that I want to at least bring back is the fact that a excitable Jake Bentley, it led to some overthrows early on in the football game. I referenced those in a query I had with head coach Will Muschamp.
Jake acknowledged that going into the Missouri game, he kind of was a little bit hyped, kind of sailed that one ball to Hayden on that 3rd down. What steps do you take this week to kind of make sure that the emotions of the home opener are channeled correctly, not just by Jake, but for your entire team?
Well, I think, again, our guys will be excited, but you lean on some of the experience you have in the room, and we've got a lot of experience in the room that our players, especially young players, will listen to and channel it a little bit better as you focus in on the game. It's something that I'll probably address before game time.
When Jake is having a start like he did against Missouri where he's a little overhyped, maybe overthrowing some stuff, do you guys have to say anything to him, or is he kind of the kind of quarterback who can just sort of work his way through that, see what he missed, and go from there?
No, I think, I know on the headsets, Kurt talked to him a little bit about calming down and just getting in the groove of the game, but he's a really good player. I mean, at the end of the day, those guys come around, and he may miss a throw or two here or there, and I know that shocks everybody, but that does happen every now and then, and you just keep playing the game. And at the end of the game, it's a 60-minute game unless you go into overtime, and he'll make his throws.
Well, obviously, 2-0. What have you seen from Jake Bentley that you've liked? Maybe what have you seen from Bentley that you haven't liked so far?
Well, I mean, again, I think a guy that's progressed tremendously in knowledge of our scheme, our system, run game, pass game, protections, where to take the ball, making fast decisions, quick decisions. There's not a lot I've been upset with, to be honest with you. There's some things that we certainly can that he can do better and we can coach better, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. So, and he'll be the first one to sit here and critique himself. But that's what really good players do. They critique themselves, and they always see room for improvement, and he certainly does as well. But I've been extremely pleased with how he's played.
Does Jake Bentley have to play a balls-out type game, like a huge game for you in order to elevate your expectations for this team?
Well, I think he's got to play extremely well to win the game, and I think he has a big game in him. You know, he through the first 2 games of the season, I mean, he's been good. Okay, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say he's been great. He's been very efficient to this part. I still think that to this point in the season, their offense is a little bit underachieving statistically speaking. I think, of course, they were facing a great defense in NC State, and they were facing a poor defense in Missouri.
Right.
So maybe I'm thinking that they did not go to Missouri and dominate offensively the way that I thought they would.
No, they did not.
As I look at the numbers here to open up the season after 2 games, I mean, the Gamecocks
they're not very well ranked.
302 yards per game.
It's not high.
No, that's not high at all. I mean, I ran the numbers on Sunday nationally. They're 100 and something.
Yeah, not good.
As far as Jake is concerned, 61%. 35 of 57, 1 pick and 4 touchdowns. That's not all that bad. I think
league average, though.
You'd still like to have the percentage up around 65.
Well, I will say this.
Maybe that's being a little nitpicky, but that's where they like it to be.
This is the one thing. I try to flush statistics because I want to see who makes winning plays.
Right.
He only once has he really put the ball in jeopardy. That's the one thing I look at for a young quarterback, because they'll start to try to force things. He has not done that. I think he now has come to the conclusion that he does not have to wear a Superman cape. Look at these weapons I have around me. All I need to do is get the ball to them.
But the weapons are useless if he can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, he only completed 18 passes against Missouri.
Yeah, but you turn around and you hand it off to those running backs. You don't have to throw it.
Yeah, but I mean, they're averaging 3.3 yards a carry. Right?
That means nothing to me when they make the plays they have to. If you run it
3 times, you're still not going to get a first
down.
down.
But they make the plays when they have to.
Well,
you're looking too much at
but against who?
No, but here's the other thing.
Right.
Remember that in college football, a sack is counted as rushing yards.
Right.
So let's remove the sack yards and then tell me how many yards.
He doesn't have that many sacks.
He only sacked 5 times.
He's only sacked twice against NC State, 3 times against Missouri.
5 times for 32 yards. That's how many times they've been sacked. They lost 32 yards off those sacks. So not significant.
Not a significant number.
Subtract that from that and give me the average.
That's not significant.
It won't make that much of a dent.
They're averaging 3.5 yards a rush.
And this is after only
first down. See, even that first down.
And
there you go.
And they
not quite.
And they only rushed for 31 yards against NC State, and the majority of the rushing yards that they got were against Missouri in the second half.
Yeah. You guys made a good point earlier, and I think this is something you're saying, making plays. The Gamecocks have 28 points off turnovers.
Yes.
And they've given up 0 points off turnovers.
They've taken full advantage of their opportunities. The problem is, though,
now, you
can't rely on that.
Their numbers are a little skewed because of NC State. What NC State have 500-something yards against them, a little over 500 yards in that game.
All between the 30s.
And the Gamecocks had like 250. Again, in 2 games, the Gamecock offense has not lit it up.
No.
There's 14 points out there, courtesy of Deebo Samuel on kickoff returns. So
I'm not going to sit here and say that they haven't been fortunate, but at the same time, you can't rely on that.
But then again, I look at it, as I said before, winning teams win and they cover up their warts. The year Alabama won the national championship, how many touchdowns did their defense score?
So you can't compare anybody to
Alabama. Alabama didn't have warts.
They did. Their offense was putrid at times. And their defense would just turn the ball over. Look, you got 10 yards to go.
They scored like 14 touchdowns on defense. On defense. Like that. Yeah,
that's my point.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot more in that tank for the Gamecock offense, and I think you'll see it at home against Kentucky.
The expectation level is
they've
much
had
higher.
to play. It's been tough on them to open the last 2 seasons. 3 games away from home last year, 2 games away from home this year. And that's a tough way to start seasons. And so now, they should cut it loose at home against this Kentucky team and make them their little child.
No excuses.
Which I think they will.